My name's Monk Rowe for the Phileas Jazz Archive. I'm very pleased to have Longineu Parsons with me this morning. Welcome, sir.
Oh, thank you very much, Monk. Great to be here.
You are down in Florida, is that correct?
Yes, I am at Florida A&M University, where I'm full professor of trumpet and composition.
When you think of yourself over the years, with all the things you do, is there one thing that you first think of yourself as?
Yes. Um, the temptation is to say the first thing is a trumpet player, but no, it's the trumpet that I use for expressing who I really am. And what I am is a force against all of this disorder that we have as human beings. My thing is I'm a person who's out here trying to leave the world better than I found it.
Through your music.
Yes, using music as my tool, my main tool. But that's been what my life has been about. I've been one about pushing forward and living a life of service and of love to my fellow humanity.
It feels like an uphill battle recently.
Certainly it is.
Yeah. So when you write a composition, is there usually something specific that gets your attention and that you feel the need to work on something new and express your reaction to it? Or is it more of a general sense of America and the world?
Well, it's the music may come from different things. It may be about something specific. It may be about just a feeling, or it might be about a certain motif that came into my head, a certain little melody, and then I might develop that. It just depends on the frame of mind, which is different from day to day. I don't have one way of doing things.
Do you write different um, when you're angry than when you're not?
I try to keep anger out of it. I think that so it's difficult to answer that because I can't see myself doing music while angry. I don't see myself as being productive in any ways while being angry. So anger is something when I feel it, then I observe myself and decide that I'm not going to be angry because it doesn't help anything.
I really like that answer. I think the reason it came to my mind is I've read over the years critics, authors, etc., who listened to some of the music from the '60s when Coltrane and Archie Shepp, etc., were, for the lack of a better term, they were playing pretty out. And sometimes you see the comment like, "What are they so angry about?" And I never talked to them, but other people say, well, this is not anger. This is something else.
Yeah, see, I'm from that. That's what really made me really decide to be a musician, train, and like that. And my dissertation um, was the jazz avant-garde is the most representative art music to come from the United States in the late 20th century. Okay,
Representative of what specifically?
the most representative art music, period. It represents what American music has led to. If you look at it structurally, um, think about somebody who was really jazz interested and they're black and they're getting university training and it's the 50s. What were they trained in? They're interested in jazz, so they're playing that. But they're learning music theory, they're learning Schoenberg, they're learning Stravinsky. They're like me, I mean, I'm later, but my education is all classical. So what would their music be like? It doesn't have to stick to song form and being nice and stuff. And the struggle, yeah, the struggle is definitely in the music. I mean, all these guys are buddies of mine. I can tell you we've had the discussions, and I can tell you that the music is out of love. Just because there's a struggle doesn't mean you have to be like. I mean, yeah, the anger is there's a certain amount of that we all have to deal with. You know, the but anger is like things like anger, jealousy, and all these things that we might feel, these are real bad things. But it's like a fire, if there's just a little bit, you can use the fire to heat your home, cook your food. But if it gets out of control, burn your house down. So, there's a tinge of that of the struggle, but it's more like, hey, but this is spiritual. This is going beyond just, oh, I feel bad because that. No, no, no. This is, hey, okay, here we come. This is beautiful stuff. This is bringing people together. We look out in the audience and all kind of people are there together digging it. Hey,
And I've seen that with some of your live performances. I could feel the even though I wasn't in the room, I could feel it between the audience and the stage. I had a was fortunate to speak with Rashid Ali, and I asked him a similar question, but it was a little more directed towards, did the musicians at that time sit down and pre-discuss, okay, now we're going to play more free. Now we're not going to be concerned with the form as much and so forth. And he said, no, it was a reflection of the times. We were growing up in a different time than the beboppers. We loved that music, but this was a different time. I thought it was quite eloquent what he said.
yes, yeah, Rashid. Yeah, if you shake his hand, you feel like it's really a hand of steel there.
Yeah.
Hard dude, man. Rashid. I always love talking with him.
Was there a particular recording? You've indicated that your training was mostly in European classical theory, etc. Was there a particular jazz recording that you would consider like an aha moment?
Oh yeah. Um, it was Coltrane. It was the album, what was it called? Expressions.
That's a heck of a place to start.
Yeah, that was, I mean, I had already stopped, I had already dropped out of pre-med and told my parents I was going to be a musician.
How did that
And
go?
they said they knew it all the time, but they had to let me figure it out.
I see.
And because my father told me, he said, it doesn't matter that much what you do. What matters is whatever it is, make sure you're the best at it.
So, what
Uh,
did you think? I had an experience with Coltrane. I was into Paul Desmond and then Cannonball, but someone said, "Well, you had to listen to John Coltrane," and unwittingly, I went to a record store and I bought the LP called Ohm,
uh-huh.
and it scared me at first. And I did not listen to him for a while until my favorite things. But what was it about expressions that hit you in the heart?
The raw emotion and the freedom of it. He was free to express what he was feeling. He didn't allow any of the so-called rules to get in the way. See, when we're studying music, like as an academic, I can tell you there's rules this and rules that, and that's BS. There's no such thing as a rule. These are performance practices. And then people came along and said, this is the rule because if you're doing Baroque music and Baroque counterpoint, this is how J.S. Bach did it. Basically, what they're saying. Therefore, this is the rule. Okay, so we learn, okay, American song form. Okay, the rules are like this. This chord means it suggests this scale or these potential scales, these chords. Okay, so we learn these things and this is how it's supposed to go. But these are somebody else's inventions, somebody else saying this is how they do it. It's good to know this. It's good to be able to use this. But at the same time, why do I need to be restricted to it? Because what if I want to employ, say, some of the 12 tone work of Arnold Schoenberg that I've spent plenty of time studying and learning how to do? You know, as part of my final, my uh my doctorate is in classical composition, and my master's is in classical trumpet. But the master's is actually both, and then the doctor, yes, composition, but with trumpet is the side thing. Um, so if I'm playing a tune like a regular jazz tune, which most of the time American song form from some show or whatever, okay, great songs, great pieces of work. As a classical composer, it's not all that exciting to me. So I'm looking at how I can bring all of this together, and um, and thinking about people like Henry Threadgill, and thinking about people like Oliver Lake, and the people I play with, well, especially Cecil Taylor, Sun Ra. They're looking for ways to do things, for new ways, or finding ways to just express who they are. And and why should that expression be restricted to what others have done before?
If you have a student, trumpet player working on improvisation, and they constantly are playing, let's say, an F sharp over a B flat chord, is there um, a difference between playing outside the chord if you do it on purpose or if you're not aware that you're doing it?
Okay, outside the chord. Well, if it's a B flat, what? Let's say if it's a B flat 7 chord and you play an F sharp, then you playing, we could say, okay, that's flat 6, a flat 13. So we could say, so where is that outside of the chord?
I had a feeling you were going to say that. Um, the,
But there is
the
a difference if you know what you're doing and if you don't.
yeah, how can you tell with the student? If I guess I'm thinking back on when especially with junior high kids, trying to teach them to improvise, and they keep playing a note that is a little bit advanced from them, and I don't feel that they know,
Oh yeah,
right?
that's
And
a wrong note. Yeah,
in that case, it's a wrong note, I guess.
yeah. Everything in context. But for me as a composer, these things there are 12 tones in every octave, and so what we think of in classic theory as right notes and wrong notes. We think about devices as composers, as modern composers. We think about these things as devices for raising the tension of the music. But there are 12 tones in every octave. So you might have to start raising maybe you want it nice and calm, so you're only going to use chord tones for a moment, but then you start using maybe extensions as it rises. But then maybe you need a good flat nine in there when it gets to a certain point, when it goes, when you're taking it up. You need these things to develop your arc of your music. If you look at classical compositions, most of the time there's an arc. Goes back to the Fibonacci numbers and all of that. And and so how are you going to construct your arc or your whatever you're going to do with it musically? And it's these notes, these notes that are not the regular chord tones that have a lot to do with it. I mean, we as we rise and we get the energy up, we may need this big cluster where we and and I mean a great example is film music, where you have to express what's going on screen. You're going to voice things a certain way if it's a gentle scene where two people are speaking with each other gently who love each other or whatever, or something nice. And then you will use different things. Say if you have somebody holding a pistol on somebody, you're going to need more attention in that music. So notes are going to be closer together. They're going to be notes that are not necessarily what we think of as chord tones. What some people would say are outside, but they're actually, as a modern composer, there's no outside.
Speaking of outside, do you think that you stand out from your classical colleagues because you're also a jazz guy?
Okay, I have to tell you the story. But for the short answer is yes. It's definitely yes. But see, I was raising a kid myself, a son. I was in Jacksonville, Florida, because I had family support there. And I was always just working at jazz, even though my undergrad stuff was classical too, but I studied some at Berkeley, but I was just playing jazz and knowing that I could play classical, but thinking, oh, there's nothing for me to do with that. So my son said to me, because I was on him about school, he said, well, Dad, why don't you go to school and learn something? You telling me about school and how important it is. What about you? I said, well, son, you're right. So I applied to the University of Florida for graduate school, and they said, Mr. the guy told me on the phone, Mr. Parsons, we don't feel that you have the musical background to be successful in our legitimate music program.
Ooh, legitimate.
He didn't understand who he said that to. See, I'm the guy who, in 1966, I was a part of integrating a public high school in Jacksonville, Florida, in redneck Jacksonville, Florida, in one of the most redneck areas of town. And I learned how to ignore certain problems and just push on with what I'm doing anyway. So, and how to push through when I needed to. And so I drove to Gainesville the next morning, and I went to his office first, and I told him that I came to register. And, make the long story short, I ended up registering. I bullshitted my way with the composition professor. Said, "Look, I know. Well, it's not really bullshit. I said, I haven't studied composition before, but I've been working in jazz music, and I've been writing music and such, and if I could just take a class as a post baccalaureate, And he looked at my resume and he said, well, of course you deserve a chance. So yeah, you come on. In fact, then he was going to put me with another composition professor. And then he changed his mind and decided he would teach me himself. And then the trumpet teacher, the same thing. I got in on the take as not real graduate level classes, but junior level classes and trumpet and composition. So about 3 weeks, a month, and the trumpet teacher said, "Well, I made a mistake. You need to be in my master's program." And she said, "Let's take care of this right now," and went to the dean's office. And the deans came out and said, "Yeah, but the composition professor has already been here and says he wants you in his program." So,
They were vying for your attention.
yeah, so they said, "Well, here at the University of Florida, we know how to do it. I tell you what, you can do both and we'll pay for it." Because they were so apologetic for having treated me so badly.
That's a terrific story.
But it goes on because when the trumpet teacher was still hard on me the whole time. I mean, but I didn't realize it. I thought this was just a normal course of study. And then after I graduated the master's, I was teaching at Florida A&M and everything. The trumpet teacher had I sent a student there who was being treated very nicely. I started sending students there, my graduates. And then the trumpet teacher had a stroke and insisted that I be the one to replace her at the University of Florida. So, um, so I was there just teaching classical all day, and they were so nice. They said, "Okay, well, we won't insult you by having you teach freshmen and sophomores. You'll teach only upper division and graduate students." Okay. And then so I talked with the dean of the music school about maybe since I'm hanging around there, maybe I could do my doctorate, finish my doctorate, because I'd already started the classes before I got the job at FAMU. I'd started on the doctorate in composition. So anyway, I while I was teaching there, I started taking composition with the head composition guy just to kind of get acquainted. And the University of Florida accepts one person into a Doctor of Composition program per year. Only one. They accepted me. So I commuted from Tallahassee to Gainesville to do this. But what I'm getting at is, see, I'm the guy who they said couldn't do that. So therefore, being the kind of butthole that I am, I had to make sure that I was the best at that, like my daddy said.
Well, you set quite a role model for your son, who sort of initiated this, and you pushed through.
Yeah.
Well done. I was wondering if you experienced what I did once. We're used to as writing jazz tunes. The model is right ahead, improvise on the form, and then play the head again. And I was struck by when I listened to the recording of Mr. PC, but John Coltrane originally, and I timed the melody, and his melody took 11 seconds, and the recording 7 minutes long. So when I tried to write classical music, what I will call classical, I was struck by how long you work on something and you play it back and like, wow, I have 1 minute so far because everything has to be notated. It's like, where is this going? I got 1 minute and it took me a week.
It can be that way. Yeah. So what I don't know if I understand what you're asking
I'm
me.
not asking a question. It's really an
Oh,
observation. And I wondered if you had that experience of working on an ensemble piece or whatever, and thinking this is going really well, but it's still very short.
Hmm. Yeah, well, to me, it's always like that, that it takes quite a while for everything. But what I have found is that if I can have like a real lot of time to be devoted to the one thing, then it gets faster as it goes.
Okay.
But to try to put in an hour or two here and there, I mean, for me, that first 2 hours is the warm up. That's to get the mind ready to get where I was. But if I'm writing classical, I'm big into motivic development, so I'm into taking a little piece of this and seeing and doing all kinds of things with it.
Do you have a favorite um, instrumentation to write for?
No, but I do have a favorite composer,
And who would that be?
Dmitri Shostakovich. Since I was a kid, his music has spoken to me, and now as a quote unquote scholar or whatever I am, then I really appreciate his sense of motivic development. He was the 20th century Beethoven.
Okay.
Da 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 da. Think about all that, how far that went with those four notes, three of them being the same notes, which actually came from a Haydn piano sonata, by the way.
I did not know that.
Beethoven studied with Haydn in his quest to learn the pen of Mozart, as he put it.
I see.
And that's from, and I mean, if you listen to early Beethoven, I mean, it's hard to tell that that's not late Haydn if you don't know the piece. But of course, everybody knows Beethoven. If you play the third, I mean, who doesn't know Eroica? But the first symphony, most people don't really know the first symphony. You hear that, it's a lot of Haydn.
Mhm. Well, I'm struck by the uh, the length and the breadth of your experience from Sun Ra to Shostakovich. And I don't have a question here, but it's simply an observation that you don't compartmentalize music. I guess that's my guess.
Yeah, I think these lines that are placed between this and between that and all these things, these are artificial lines that people have placed, and that's symbolic of the lines that we human beings place between each other in life, all over the world in all kinds of ways. We have all of these lines that say, I'm different from you. And that's the biggest bunch of bullshit going in the world. This is what's keeping us at war. This is what's keeping us with all of this strife, is that we make these lines instead of saying, hey, wait a minute, we don't have to be that way. I've been blessed to be able to travel over a great part of the world. And I get to travel in a way so that I'm in places for a while. I get to know people who live in places. And people are people when it comes down to it. And then we're saying, oh yeah, but I don't like them because they're like this and I don't like them. It's crazy. I know people in Paris where you have Iranian and Israeli making music together. Now, this is an example of how we humans need to learn how to live. My production company is Tribal Disorder Productions. We're a force against the disorder in the human tribe. I know humanity is a species, not a tribe, but I'm using tribe to say, hey, it's time for us to come together as one tribe. And we are, I think, at an existential state right now, as far as where we are as humans getting along. Sun Ra always said that harmony, musicians are here to make harmony among people, to bring people together. And that's what my life has been. Yeah, like you said, Shostakovich to Sun Ra to Archie Shepp to I came up in Cab Calloway's band and playing shows and stuff, Broadway shows. So all of that, and I really before that I played the Chitlin circuit playing R&B where um, that was really crazy playing in places where they bootlegging the liquor and and
You made it your business to know where the exits were, right? I love I love your description. It reminds me of fellows like Joe Wilder and
uh,
the long trek through all these different kinds of gigs and developing a work ethic, which is so important, um, and making yourself stand out so your phone rings.
yeah, yes. It's a passion, and someone who doesn't love it shouldn't mess with this.
Do you see that in your students? Does it occur to you? I remember Phil Wood said this thing. I'll be very brief about it. He said, if you're thinking of being a jazz tenor player or a brain surgeon, be the brain surgeon and play tenor on the weekends. Like you have,
Yeah,
yeah, you have to
I'm
like
with that completely.
something you have to do is to be a musician. If you don't have to, then you
Do
won't.
something else. That's right. Do that other thing.
Well, I wanted to bring up a couple people. First of all, I was looking at your list of folks you've, had associations with, and my job is actually named after Joe Williams. I'm the Joe Williams director of the Phileas Jazz Archive, and he helped us get this project off the ground. You have memories with him?
Yeah, yes, I do have memories of Joe Williams. I loved his whole style, his way of being on stage. I mean, yeah, he was something else. And see, when I was coming up as a musician, my mother always said, I hope you get to, she's saying her favorite singer was Joe Williams. So she was saying, yeah, she would hope that maybe I would get to play with him someday or know him or something like that. Or, get to check him out live or something. So my mother was visiting me in New York, and it happened that Joe Williams was playing at a club there. So I said, "Hey, mom, we're going out tonight." And then she said, "Well, where are we going?" I said, "You don't worry about it. Just come on." And then as we were getting ready, she said, "Oh, where is he playing?" She knew that must have been why I was taking her out. So I said, "We're going." Yeah, okay. So okay, you got it. So I I tipped the maitre d'. I guess he wouldn't have been maitre d'. Well, anyway, the guy who met us there, because was it a restaurant? Yeah, maybe. I don't even remember if it was just a bar. Yeah, it must have been a restaurant with Joe Williams. So yeah, anyway, I tipped him and said, "Look, my mother would really like to meet Joe Williams." So, and I slid him a little bit or something, a little money. And then so then he took my mom up to meet Joe Williams in there. And then the then the maitre d came back to me. He said, "Okay, man, you can go back and meet him too if you want to." So I went back and said hello. We hung out. We had a nice little hang there.
Indeed. He was a classy guy, and he also was a good example. I've noticed I mentioned Joe Wilder and Milt Hinton. They all had this thing that they were wonderful people, friendly, but at the same time, they had so much pride in what they did. Like, don't mess with that. Don't disrespect what they do, or you'll be sorry. I mean, they would react to something where if they were being taken advantage of, they weren't the kind of people that were just so nice that you could do anything and take advantage of them. They would not allow that.
Well, we mustn't think that because somebody is nice that they can't take care of themselves. In fact, I think for my life, I keep myself in very excellent physical condition and study martial arts since I was a teenager. And the point is to lead a gentle life, to be a nice person, to not have to be mean to people or to be like this, any of that kind of stuff. Be nice and loving, to not have to descend to somebody else's level if they want to insult me or something like that. To be above all of these things.
Yeah. The other name I wanted to bring up, and I know it's dear to both of us, is the Adderleys.
Oh,
That's what I say. Oh, um, I just felt that Cannonball for me was it. He just exuded everything I wanted to be, like a saxophone player, a spokesman, and then I got into their music, especially in the 60s. And eventually I was able to sit with Nat Adderley for an hour, and it was a highlight of my life.
really?
Yes,
Okay. Can I have a 30-second pause? I
yes,
want to get,
indeed.
okay.
Are you going to tell me that that's Nat Adderley's horn?
That's right. This is the one he did those recordings with Cannonball on.
Oh, how did you end up with that?
Family wanted me to play it.
Oh,
Matt raised me as a musician. He and
wow.
Cannonball knew my father when they were all here at Florida A&M as students. And see, because when I started playing the horn, see, my parents always had music in the house growing up. And my dad said, "Oh, you playing the cornet? Well, you got to hear Nat Adderley. That's my buddy from school, and his brother and Cannonball Adderley and him." And so, and they were all part of the same social circles, all the doctor this and professor that and this and that and the other, So, so it was, yeah, well, you're going to play music, you listen to them. And they played Duke Ellington for me all the time. Well, they played all the time, listening to Duke Ellington, Lionel Hampton, and my mother liked Dinah Washington and Ella Fitzgerald and Sarah Vaughan. And but yeah, the Adderleys. And then what happened was when I came back to school to be a musician, I was well, Cannonball and Nat were coming to do a concert at Florida A&M. And so I knew I was waiting for them to come up for they were going to do what was it? Like a little seminar during the day before the concert. And so I knew they'd be coming up. So I, I worked outside so I could see him drive up so I could meet him. And I came up, they said, "Oh, I know who you are," and all that. And because I'm junior, so I said, "Yeah, my name is Longineu." "Oh, yeah, oh, okay, yeah, uh-huh. How's your dad doing?" Yeah, it was like that. And then Cannonball was speaking to us, the students who were in the recital hall, and they played something. He had Hal Galper and on piano and Roy McCurdy on drums. And the guy sitting next to me, another trumpet player in the band, whose last name was McCurdy, and he said, "I wonder if I'm related to him." Turned out they are cousins.
Oh my
and so and so then Cannonball played something, and then Cannonball and that, and then they opened it up and said, "Okay, well, let's see let's hear the students play." And they were surprised that we had a line of students who could really improvise. But I went first. I made sure I could play first, and I started playing, and they were in the back doing like Cannonball and Nat would do. I'm sure it was something illegal not to be talked about. And then I'm playing, and then what I heard was after I started playing, Nat and Cannonball came back out to look to see what was going on, to see who was this playing. And Nat said, "Look, you stick close to me. I look out for you." And he called my mother and told her the same thing and said, "Look, you don't let him sign any contract without talking to me. So
Wow.
I can make sure." He said, "A lawyer can make sure it's legally binding, but I know what it means in the business." And he kept that, and it was like that. And he told Nat Jr. and Allison, his two kids, he said, "Look, y'all have a brother. His name is Longineu. That's my son too." Well, Nat had Bell's palsy, and then and so it lost one side of his face, the feeling. So anyway, it gradually got better, but he couldn't play. He had me playing some stuff in his place, some of the gigs and stuff. And then but when he could try to play the horn again, it really wasn't good, that he had really lost. And so I told him, Nat, there are things we can do to help you with that. Well, no, the doctor told me that's the best it's going to get. So I'm like, I don't care what the doctor said, I can help you. So he argued me down, because he was obstinate, boy, Nat, he was going to be right. So anyway, I had a gig in St. Augustine and he was living in Lakeland. So I called him up. I said, Nat, after my gig tonight, I'll get off about what I get off at 1 a.m. I'm going to drive to Lakeland. And then I'm going to give you these exercises that are going to straighten your lips out. And if it doesn't work for you, I'll pay you for the lesson. So he couldn't say anything. He said, "All right, come on, come on." So I went, we had breakfast, and I gave him the exercises, and I demonstrated how to use them and stuff like that. And then he gave me the highest compliment. He said, "Do you know what you are, Longineu? Do you know what you are?" Oh, goodness, what's this? "Do you know what you are?" "No, Nat, what is that?" "You a motherfucker."
High praise.
Yeah. So anyway, so his wife Ann said, "Okay, Longineu, I'm gonna make him do it. I'm gonna make him do it." So a couple of months later, I'm on a gig in Orlando. In comes Nat Adderley holding his horn in his horn case. Now, all before, Nat had been telling me, you don't come and sit in on my gig because you ain't gonna make no reputation on me. All out of love, fun.
Yeah.
So here he is coming up to me. "Hey man, can I sit in?" "What?" "Yeah." "What is this?" So he came and pulled out his horn. He sounded like the old Nat Adderley. He wanted to show me that this did this for him.
Oh, bless your heart. I didn't know any of that.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, because um, I was very much into learning about my embouchure, about how embouchure development is. And I had a buddy a close friend with this amazing range, and I wanted to learn from him how he got it. And he showed me the exercises from Carmine Caruso because he studied with him for a long time. So I got really the benefit of Caruso training, but without ever knowing Mr. Caruso.
Awesome.
And then I gave the stuff to Nat, and it worked. And I use the same stuff with my students. I've fixed many embouchures,
And you've played with Nat Jr.
a
And
lot
yeah,
over the past 20 years or so.
that's really precious. It occurred to me this morning I saw Jesse Jackson had passed away, and so I had to go get this out. If you can see that or not.
Yeah, I see what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, and Country Preacher was that was Jesse Jackson.
Yeah.
And that album's just fascinated me. The recording when they did Country Preacher, that place, that church was packed with people, and they just went crazy. It was a real lesson in dynamics and so forth.
Yes. That's Yeah, dynamics are so important. When we hear straight ahead jazz, a lot of times we hear you play the song for them, and and it's like this. Everybody shows all the licks that they know, and it's like this. But to me, music can go on a journey.
I saw a video, I think it was a club called the Velvet Note.
Oh, in Atlanta, well, outside of Atlanta.
Yeah, and I wrote down one comment on it, two actually, and one was dynamics because your pieces were very, as you said, like up, it had an arc to it and some high points and um, very, very interesting. I think it was called, one of them was called Forest Song. Is that correct?
Oh, forest song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you playing a bass recorder or something?
Yes.
Wow.
The forest song was a different one. Forest song was something I wrote while I was in a monastery in Thailand. In my doing my 2 weeks of silent meditation.
Really?
Yes,
What came out of that experience?
it's the best thing I ever did for myself. That I grew up. My father was superintendent of the Sunday school, so I grew up a church boy and all this kind of stuff. But being into martial arts and Eastern ways and being interested in Eastern ways, I wanted to experience doing that, being in a Buddhist monastery and doing that just to see what it was about. Um, it was just kind of, how do I say, an adventure, a kind of fantasy and all that. So I went, and it's 95 degrees every day, no air conditioning and out there. And so for it was, you don't speak, you just only speak with the teacher for about 20 minutes a day. And other than that, you're in silent meditation. And so it was really miserable for the first 4 days. But by day 5, it went from miserable to wonderful. It was like it didn't matter anymore that it was hot. It didn't matter that I could do my physical exercises and the sweat would be so much it would wet the floor. It just didn't matter anymore. I was going towards something else. And on day 11, I was in lying down meditation. It was the evening of day 11. And I jumped up because the realization is that these teachings, this is what Jesus was telling us. And that was a revelation. And so this is how I learned to start looking at myself almost in the third person, so I can see if this emotion is really relevant to me. Is this what's going to actually help me, or this, or that? And things like anger and jealousy or hatred and all, to try to banish these things from my life.
Wow.
And so the last thing on my bucket list was to go back there. So I did that, and it was so good that I did it summer before last, and it was so good I did it again last summer. And
Well,
two,
it's working for you. That's very clear.
yes, yeah, my wife is really happy about it. She says it just that she enjoys the person who has come from that.
Mm. On a practical level, what do you tell your students about making a living in music?
Well, see, there are various ways to make a living because we have a music industry program. And so they're learning business and they're learning marketing and all the business classes. They're learning accounting, they're learning public relations. So the only thing that I really have to tell them about the business is only do this if you love it enough to give everything you have to it. Other than that, don't mess with it.
I guess your son loved it enough to do it because I see his name. I mean, when I Googled you, I also saw him.
Probably more him than me. That character, surely more him than me. And then yeah, see, he and his mama, and we had a gig with the show Bubbling Brown Sugar. His mama and I. She was a dancer, and I was the lead trumpet player, and we were touring Europe for a year, and he was a year and a half at the time we started the tour, and so and he was with us all the time. But the first week we were there, the the music director and contractor for the show was there rehearsing everybody. We had the week of rehearsal, and and the head music guy was also the godfather of our son. So, an old friend. So he saw him looking at the drums, and he said, "Let's put him up on the drums and see what he'll do." I thought it was funny. He put the little kid on the drums, right? But instead of banging on the drums, he was like, "What will this do?" Uh-huh. And then they said, well, "Wait a minute. That's not what the kid's supposed to be doing. He's actually trying to figure out what they do." So they let him sit on the drums every day, let him play with the drums. By week's end, he was playing ding, 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 and they were playing it. So everybody got a kick out of it. So the drummer said, "Well, look, he can practice my drums every day." And so he would just come in and he would practice the drums and got him a pad so he could practice in the hotel rooms. And that's just all he would do. And he would watch the show and be playing air drums with his drumsticks. That threw me completely. Oh yeah, so that's all he's wanted to do. So at 5, we were living in Guadeloupe, and he was watching the drummer, and some of the singers said, "Well, look how he's just looking at the drummer playing air drums. Let's see what he can do." And so they thought it was funny, but he sat on the drums and was playing. And they said, "Oh man, we have to let him play." And the singer said, "Okay, listen, have him play a number." And it was televised in Guadeloupe. So he was 5 years old, and that was his first public gig. And so that's all he ever wanted to do was play drums.
And he's doing it full time. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. Yeah, playing with rock groups. He's really a jazz drummer. He came up playing all kind of jazz with me. Even got to play with Sam Rivers, and he got to play all kind of people and be around people. He got to play peekaboo with Dizzy Gillespie. It was like, and yeah, and then he got into metal and everything. He's doing a lot of rock, a lot of metal, and it's taking him places I haven't been.
Hmm. You've played for some royalty. Looking at your thing, the president, king of Morocco, and the royal family of the Netherlands.
Yes, an interesting story about going to Morocco to play for the king. I was on the flight, and they flew us in business class, and there were 3 of us sitting together. The guy next to me was from Morocco, and we were speaking, and there was a guy who was with him who was just really quiet. He introduced me to him, but he never said anything for the whole flight. But the guy in the middle, and we were talking. His name was Mohammed, and we would talk. He was a nice guy, man. We talked the whole way, man. Fun, and then we got there, and the king's personal security came to make sure we were okay. But this guy, Muhammad, he didn't have to pull out any documents. He and the king's personal security guy did the 2 cheek kiss, and he walked on through. Damn. And then when I saw the king's family, I saw the way they looked, and I said, "Oh my God, this is the king's son." So he's now King Muhammad.
Oh man, I'm sure you were thinking back like, gee, what did I say to him? Wow, that's a great experience.
Yeah.
What's up next for you? You have concerts you do at A&M, or you're constantly lining up gigs for yourself?
Yes, yes. Okay, I have a few different things going. One thing is I'm doing these Louis Armstrong tributes, and those are going very well. And I was somewhat rejecting that, trying not to do those things anymore. But then I realized if I'm going to do a tribute to somebody else, at least I'm fortunate enough to be doing it to the greatest of all time, the great Louis Armstrong, who I admire not just as a musician, but as a person. Okay. And so, other than that, I also have my quartet things that I get booked, and I go to Asia during summers and play in clubs, a club there in Taiwan, and hang out with my son who lives there.
Your son lives in Taiwan.
My younger son,
Oh,
he's
your youngest
two-time
son.
national jiu-jitsu champion of Taiwan.
You are an interesting guy.
And then I had now my wife is a concert pianist from the Polish National Conservatory, but she did her doctorate here in piano at Florida State. And then a couple of years ago, she decided she was going to be jazz. So she spends hours every day, hours with an S, every day. I mean, like 7 days a week, you know, learning jazz tunes and just working on this with that great classical technique that she has. So we call ourselves Duo Paloma. And we were just a strictly classical duo playing the French trumpet piano literature that's so interesting and that kind of stuff, and adapting other literature to trumpet and piano. But now we have the improvisational element added to it. So I've always wanted to play with a pianist who understood something about classical composition. So this gives me that.
Yeah, that's a rare combination to have someone who can live in both worlds like that, as well
Yes.
as you do. Yeah.
Yeah, I insist on not being restricted. I've had a good time playing with Africans, playing African music. We have one recording we did with the company that's we think is the first instance of the Chinese guzheng and the Indian sitar playing Indian classical music together.
Wow. Well, this has been a fabulous conversation, and I appreciate your time today. And best of luck with your future projects and to your son as well.
Yeah, well, wow. Thank you very much for being interested in my story.
It and it's ongoing, and I think you have an agent or a manager or something who dropped the Nat Adderley name, and I had heard of you before, and then when I heard Nat Adderley, I said, "Oh, okay, you and I have to talk."
Uh-huh. Yep. Yeah. Yes. Here he is.
That's terrific. I had to
Well,
play. I forgot to mention that he came to Fredonia, SUNY Fredonia, where I went to school up in New York State, and they came just like where they came to A&M, and they did a clinic, and I had to play. I shouldn't say I had to. I got to play in front of Cannonball, and the odd part was there was no rhythm section, so we were just like playing a cappella. And I don't remember what I did, but he was pretty gracious, especially it was like, I think 9 o'clock in the morning, you know.
yeah. Do you know the story of how he got known in New York?
Yes, I do. And as a matter of fact, Jerome Richardson told me that story. But what do you know of it?
Well, they were like, okay, who's this fat boy from down there in the South? Okay, let's get rid of him. So he said whatever it was. I think I remember April might have been the tune, and they took it way up tempo and took it through the keys on him. They thought they were going to get rid of him, but that's his thing. So they were, so he wailed it. Next thing, it was all over town. Here's this boy from down there in Florida who's killing it.
And wasn't he a school teacher at the time?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Dillard High School down in Fort Lauderdale, down in South Florida.
Oh, well, once more, thanks for your time today. I appreciate it.
Great pleasure for me. I'm really flattered. Thank you. Thank you very much, Monk. Thank you
Okay,
for having me.
bye bye.
Bye.